March 5th, 1943, 27,000 feet above the Ruhr Valley, Germany. The canopy of Lieutenant Harold Hawk Ellison's P-47C shimmered with frost crystals, tiny stars glittering against a world of blinding white cloud and endless cold blue sky. His oxygen mask hissed in a slow, steady rhythm, the only sound besides the deep, thunderous vibration of the Pratt & Whitney R2800 engine rumbling at his back. The Jug, as the pilots affectionately called her, didn't climb so much as haul herself upward, muscles of steel straining under a 7-ton frame. Ellison scanned the horizon. The sun was setting behind him, bleeding gold across the tops of the clouds. Ahead, Germany. Black flak scars pocked the sky over the industrial valley, the heart of the Reich's war machine. Below, somewhere beneath the roiling haze, smokestacks exhaled thick plumes from factories producing the engines, ammunition, and armor that kept Hitler's war alive. A voice crackled over the radio. "Red Leader, this is Red 2. Contrails at high 1 o'clock. Ellison tensed. Estimate? 5, no 8 aircraft, closing fast. 28, maybe 29. Ellison's stomach tightened. That altitude meant only one thing. Focke-Wulf's, the FW-190A5. Germany's high-altitude predator, the Luftwaffe's pride. Sleek, fast, and deadly. A scalpel against the Jug's sledgehammer. He flicked his mic. "Red Squadron, tighten up. They're coming." A ripple of static. Then, "Roger." "Copy? Do you?" And they came in high. They came in fast. And they came with arrogance. At their head flew Oberleutnant Erich Gruber, one of JG-26's rising aces. His canopy gleamed as he rolled inverted, giving the Americans below a full, leisurely look. He clicked his radio. "Amerikanische Milchflaschen," he chuckled. American milk jugs. His wingman laughed. He laughed louder. To them, the P-47 looked like a mistake. A brute. A barrel with wings. Too heavy, too fat, too slow to climb, too sluggish to turn. A bomber escort pretending to be a fighter. Gruber's voice crackled across German headsets. "We dive through them. One pass. They break. They always break." He pushed his nose down. The 190s followed, sunlight glinting off their gun ports. Ellison's eyes narrowed behind his goggles. He could almost feel the Germans' confidence, the same smug attitude intelligence briefings warned them about. "Red Squadron," he murmured, keeping calm even as adrenaline surged through him. "Hold formation. Don't you flinch." The Focke-Wulfs screamed downward. 1 second, 2, 3. Tracer fire ripped past Ellison's right wing, slicing the air with sizzling white streaks. "Break! Break!" someone shouted. But Ellison didn't, because the Jug had a secret. The Germans thought she was sluggish at altitude. They were wrong. The old P-47C had its flaws, yes. But up here, at thin air and freezing temperatures, that massive General Electric turbo supercharger in the belly turned the Jug into a monster. While German engines gasped for oxygen, the Thunderbolt gulped it like a beast. Gruber lined up behind a P-47 at the edge of the formation, grinning. "I have him." He pressed the trigger. Guns chattered. Sparks blossomed across the P-47's cowling. But the American didn't fall. He dove, hard, almost vertically, and the speed he gained was unreal. Gruber blinked. He tried to follow. But the 190 vibrated violently, unable to match the Jug's screaming dive. Ellison seized the moment. "Red Squadron, hit them!" The Jug roared forward. Its massive prop blades bit the air like a circular saw. The altimeter spun downward, but the airspeed indicator surged. The tables turned instantly. One of the German fighters passed in front of him. Too slow, too level, too cocky. "Got you," Ellison whispered. He squeezed the trigger. 8 50 caliber Browning M2 machine guns erupted in unison. Not a harmonized spray, but a wall, a blizzard of molten metal. The recoil shook the entire aircraft. Brass casing streamed behind him like burning hail. The rounds tore into the 190's right wing, punching ragged holes through aluminum skin and fuel lines. The German aircraft jerked sideways, trailing smoke. The pilot tried to roll, but the next burst ripped the canopy, spraying glass into the cockpit. The fighter exploded in a blossom of flame. "Scratch one!" someone shouted. Ellison banked left, heart hammering. Two more Focke-Wulfs came around for a second pass, but their attack was sloppy now. Messy, hesitant. The Americans weren't running. They were fighting, and they were winning. Gruber barked an order through clenched teeth. "Reform! Push through them!" But his men weren't reforming. They were scattering. A Jug thundered past Gruber's wing, close enough he saw the white paint chips on its nose cone. Its guns chewed up the sky in front of him. The air around his aircraft crackled with death. Gruber pulled up sharply. He needed altitude, space, but Ellison followed. The Jug shouldn't have been able to. Not at this climb angle, not at this weight, yet there it was, glued to his tail. "Impossible," Gruber spat. Ellison lined the German ace in his gun sight. The gyro sight settled perfectly. He fired. The 50s hammered again, lighting up the cockpit with muzzle flash. Rounds slammed into Gruber's fuselage, shredding aluminum, severing control cables, detonating the oxygen tank behind the seat. The Focke-Wulf lit up like a comet. It spiraled downward, flaming, black smoke smearing across the sky. The radio exploded with American cheers. Ellison didn't cheer. He simply breathed. For the first time, he understood why the Jug's nickname, the one whispered by crews on the ground, was beginning to catch on. The Juggernaut, the fighter no one thought could win a dogfight, had just massacred a formation of Germany's finest at altitude. Ellison exhaled into his mask, voice low and steady. "They're not laughing anymore." March 5th, 1943. Same engagement. 27,000 feet over the Ruhr Valley. The smoke trail from Gruber's shattered FW-190 was still drifting downward like a black ribbon when Lieutenant Harold Hawk Ellison leveled off, breath frosting his oxygen mask, hands trembling from adrenaline and cold. Below him, Germany burned. Above him, the sky was suddenly quiet, almost too quiet. Then the radio cracked alive. "Red leader! Bandits still in the fight! 3 more diving in from high noon!" Ellison rolled his P-47, nose swinging toward the glint of 3 new silhouettes cutting across the sun. They weren't FW-190s. He recognized the narrow wings, the streamlined fuselage, Bf-106s. The workhorse of the Luftwaffe, fast, nimble, and deadly in the hands of a veteran. A voice drifted through his headset in a thick German accent, broken by static. "Amerikaner, this sky belongs to the Reich," Ellison muttered. "Not today, it doesn't." He shoved the throttle forward. The R-2800 engine roared like a living thing, the turbo supercharger screaming a metallic howl that vibrated through his seat. The Jug surged ahead, heavy but unstoppable. The lead 109 dove straight through the American formation. No hesitation, no fear. The Germans had seen the smoke from the lost Focke-Wulfs, but they weren't breaking. Not yet. Pride, doctrine, and years of air superiority had hardened them against retreat. Below Ellison, one of his wingmen, Lieutenant Frank "Skipper" Malone, yanked his P-47 into a steep climb, trying to shake the second 109. "Red leader, I can't shake him. He's all over me." Ellison snapped into action. "Hold steady, Skipper. Bring him toward me." "I'm trying. Damn it, he's firing." Tracer fire carved bright lines through the air, stitching sparks across Malone's wing route. Smoke streamed from his right engine panel. Ellison dropped into a shallow dive, gun sight glowing amber through the canopy frost. The Jug accelerated like a meteor, gravity adding teeth to the engine's already monstrous thrust. Come on, Ellison whispered. The 109 closed in on Malone, cannons hammering. Ellison squeezed the trigger. 8 50 caliber guns answered, turning the empty air between the Jug and the Messerschmitt into a storm of metal. The rounds punched into the 109's belly, ripping open oil lines, shattering the canopy frame, shredding the pilot's shoulder. The German pitched forward in his harness. The fighter rolled inverted. Then it spiraled downward, vanishing into cloud, leaving only smoke behind. "Skipper, you're clear," Ellison said. Malone coughed through the radio. You just saved my ass, Hawk. Buy me a beer in London. I'll buy you a whole damn pub. But there was no time to breathe. The third 109 roared in on Ellison's right flank, guns flashing. Bullets hammered the Jug's fuselage, loud metallic clanks as thick armor absorbed the impact. Ellison jerked the stick left, feeling the heavy sluggishness of the big aircraft. The Jug didn't snap roll like a Spitfire. She didn't flick over like a Mustang. You didn't dance in a P-47. You fought. He inverted. Dove. Rolled out. The G-forces pressed him deeper into the seat until his spine felt like it might snap. The 109 stayed glued to him, a good German pilot. Disciplined, precise, patient. He knew the Thunderbolt's weaknesses. She bled speed in tight turning fights. If he could force Ellison into a flat turn, he'd win. Ellison's breath hissed through his mask. Sweat rolled down his temple. His wing vibrated under cannon fire. Come on, come on. He flicked a glance at his altimeter, 24,000 feet. The Jug still had power left. He made his choice. Red Squadron, he barked. Get clear. He shoved the throttle forward and pulled the nose up, straight up, as if trying to climb into heaven itself. The 109 followed, expecting the Jug to stall out. But the Jug didn't. At high altitude, the turbocharger screamed, ramming cold, dense air into the engine, flipping the laws of physics the German pilot had been taught to rely on. Ellison climbed. The German hesitated. Then he stalled. The 109 wobbled, nose dipping. Ellison rolled onto his back, letting the Jug fall into a controlled inverted dive, gun sight dropping perfectly onto the helpless German fighter below. He squeezed the trigger. White-hot streams of .50 caliber death tore downward, ripping through the Messerschmitt's cockpit. The pilot slumped. The fighter burst into flame, whipping into a tumbling descent like a burning leaf. Ellison exhaled slowly. 3 enemy fighters down, 1 formation shattered, and the sky was finally still. His radio crackled. Red leader, Hawk, command wants a report. Ellison scanned the sky. Empty now, except for drifting contrails and the distant thump of flak near the horizon. He replied quietly, "Tell them the Jug held her own." A pause, then a laugh. "Hell, Hawk. She did more than that." Ellison banked toward the west, toward home. He felt the adrenaline fading, replaced by a deep, bone-aching fatigue. His flight suit was damp with sweat. His hands shook faintly on the stick. Below him, the world rolled on, indifferent to the young men killing and dying above it. He thought of the German pilots who had dived so confidently into the fight, who had laughed at the P-47, who now lay burning in the valleys below. He whispered into his mask, "They're done underestimating us." But he had no idea, not yet, how quickly the Jug would rise from underdog to legend. Not until the next mission. Not until the Luftwaffe realized what was coming. And by then, it would be too late. May 22nd, 1943. 30,000 feet above the Netherlands. The cold at this altitude was the kind that seeped through flight suits, through heated gloves, through skin and muscle, until it gnawed on bone. Frost feathered across the inner curve of Lieutenant Colonel Hubert "Hub" Zemke's canopy, and every breath hissed through his oxygen mask like steam escaping a cracked pipe. Below him, 50 B-17s pushed east in tight formation, engines thundering against the thin air. Above him, a small constellation of silver-gray shapes held steady, a defensive crown of P-47 Thunderbolts, sunlight flashing along the broad, powerful wings. Hub glanced down at his altimeter, 29,800 feet, right in the Jug's domain. A voice crackled over the radio, deep, steady, unmistakable. "This is Zemke. Stay sharp. They'll be here." They were. A shout burst through the squadron channel. "Bandits, 10 o'clock high. Contrails." Zemke snapped his head left. Silhouettes, dozens of them, Bf-109s and F-190s, a full Jagdgeschwader. They weren't sneaking in this time. They were challenging them. One pilot muttered, "Christ, that's a whole damn beehive." Zemke tightened his grip on the stick. "Let them come." The Luftwaffe formation split, a perfect, practiced maneuver. Half dove for the bombers, half climbed to meet the P-47s. Zemke could almost feel the German confidence. They still thought the Thunderbolt was a lumbering brute. They still thought it couldn't climb, couldn't turn, couldn't fight at altitude. They still thought it was a joke. But today, they were about to learn. A German voice cut across the frequencies, accidental bleed-over from an enemy transmission. Achtung! The fat ones are here. Zemke grinned behind his mask. Let's give them something fat to choke on. He shoved the throttle forward. The turbo superchargers shrieked. The Jug leapt ahead. The fight exploded all at once. German fighters dove in pairs, cannon bursts flashing like camera bulbs in the freezing sky. B-17s answered with sheets of tracer fire from every turret, turning the world into a spinning, strobing hell. Zemke cut across the nose of a diving 190, rolled inverted, and snapped into a high G-pull that would have torn lesser aircraft to pieces. His gun sight glowed. A shape filled the ring. He fired. 8 streams of 50 caliber shells tore into the Focke-Wulf, punching through the engine, splitting it open in a burst of oil, flame, and shrapnel. The German pilot bailed out, parachute barely opening before he vanished into the clouds. Zemke didn't watch him fall. 2 more 109s slid in behind him. Zemke, you've got a pair on your tail. I see them. He rolled right, hard, then snapped left. Not a graceful maneuver, but a violent, brutal one. The Jug didn't dance. It hammered its way through the sky. The Germans overshot. Zemke reversed, nose swinging onto their 6. The Germans dove for escape. Bad choice. The P-47 was the fastest diving aircraft in the European theater. Even the vaunted 190 couldn't outrun it once gravity joined the fight. Zemke pushed the stick forward. The Jug plunged. The air howled along the canopy frame. The wings shuddered. The world blurred. The Germans grew larger in his gun sight. He fired. The lead 109 disappeared in a flash, a smear of debris tumbling into the haze. The second tried to split S. Another mistake. The Jug followed. Engine snarling, guns roaring, fury unleashed in streams of white-hot metal. The 109 exploded. He climbed back toward the bomber stream, but something was different. The Germans were running. What had begun as a proud attack had become a disorganized retreat. P-47s tore through the enemy formation like steel fists, and one by one, the Luftwaffe peeled away, unwilling to lose more pilots to the flying milk bottles. A panicked German voice broke through the radio again. Das Donnerflugzeug, nicht oben kämpfen! The Thunder airplane, don't fight it up high! Zemke pulled level with his wingman, Lieutenant Ralph Jenkins, who let out a breathless laugh. Sir, did we just break them? Zemke looked out at the contrails, the burning streaks, the thin air sparkling with ice crystals. No, he said quietly. But this is the beginning. He watched a lone F-190 dive away, trailing smoke. They used to laugh at us, Jenkins said. Behind his frosted mask, Zemke's eyes hardened. They won't laugh again. He was right. That day marked a shift, a realization, a warning. The Luftwaffe's cocky certainty evaporated after the battles of Spring 43. The Jug was no longer the American oddity, no longer the punchline. It was a predator, a high-altitude monster, a machine perfectly suited to the war the Allies were about to fight. Long-range strikes, deep escorts, relentless offensives, where toughness mattered more than elegance. The P-47 was not delicate. It was durable, not graceful, but unstoppable. And as the bombs kept falling, as the Thunderbolts kept pushing deeper into Germany, one thing became terrifyingly clear. The Jug wasn't just winning fights. It was bleeding the Luftwaffe dry. August 17, 1943, 28,000 feet over Schweinfurt, Germany. The sky looked peaceful from a distance. Thin, pale blue, almost serene. But up close, it was chaos incarnate. Smoke trails twisted like torn ribbons. Empty 50 caliber casings rattled down bomber fuselages. Engines burned in the thin air, coughing black fire as stricken B-17s began their slow, terrible spirals toward the distant farmlands below. It was the second Schweinfurt raid, and the Luftwaffe had come out in force. German pilots, aces with names whispered in flight briefings like curses, sliced into the bomber stream in coordinated waves. Their attacks were ruthless, precise, terrifyingly confident. But this time, the Americans had brought something new. P-47 Thunderbolts, dozens of them. Zemke's Wolfpack, Lieutenant Harold Bud Mahurin, felt the first tremor of enemy fire pass beneath his right wing. bursts of 20mm cannon shells ripping past in a sizzling arc. He jerked the stick left. The Jug responded instantly, rolling with the weight and authority of a machine built not to finesse the air, but to dominate it. A Bf-109 streaked past, canopy glinting. Mahurin saw the pilot glance back, expecting to see the Thunderbolt wallow behind him, too heavy to follow. Instead, Mahurin shoved the nose down and unleashed the Jug's deadliest trait. The dive. The world blurred into a tunnel of screaming wind. His altimeter spun. His oxygen mask rattled against his face. The Jug did not resist. It accelerated with brute, unstoppable force. The German pilot realized too late. Mahurin opened fire. 8 50-caliber guns erupted in perfect sync, 720 rounds per second, tearing across the sky like a horizontal lightning storm. The tracers stitched along the 109's fuselage, ripping through its canopy, breaking the aircraft open in a brutal blossom of metal and flame. The German ace tumbled into the void. Mahurin pulled up, hard, bones compressing under the G-force. "Splash one," he muttered, breath fogging the inside of his mask. Below him, another fight unfolded. A lone P-47 being swarmed by 3 F-190s. Captain Robert "Duck" Johnson was that pilot. He wasn't smiling now. Sweat dripped down his temples as he threw his Jug into a high yo-yo turn. The 190s were fast, sleek killers with wings built for murder. They danced around him, their cannon fire flashing like rapid lightning. A shell struck his left wingtip. Metal shrieked. Johnson cursed, banked sharply, and squeezed his triggers. The Thunderbolt answered. A wall of tracers engulfed one of the Focke-Wulfs at point-blank range. The German fighters simply disintegrated. No fireball, no dramatic explosion. Just a sudden, violent shredding of aluminum and flesh. The second F-190 dove away. The third tried to break high. Johnson followed, engine screaming. "Come on, girl," he whispered. One more. But at 25,000 feet, something happened the Germans did not expect. The FW-190's engine sputtered. The thin air starved its power plant, causing a brief but deadly hesitation. The P-47's turbo-supercharged Pratt & Whitney R2800 did not hesitate. The Jug surged forward. Johnson fired. The German fighter exploded in a burst of fire and spinning debris. Johnson exhaled shakily. "Clear, I'm clear." But the fight wasn't over. Not even close. Across the sky, a shift began, subtle at first, then unmistakable. German formations were unraveling. The Luftwaffe attacks, once perfectly timed, began to falter. Aces who once dove headlong into bomber streams now pulled away at the sight of Thunderbolts waiting above. The rhythm of the battle had changed. Major Zemke saw it from altitude, watching through frost-streaked glass as another wave of German fighters approached the bomber stream, and then hesitated. They were calculating the dive. They were gauging the escorts. They were afraid. A voice crackled over the German radio band. "Achtung! The Thunderbolts are climbing!" Zemke allowed himself a grim smile. He keyed his mic. "Wolfpack, push them down." The P-47s rolled in like a descending curtain of steel. The Germans panicked. FW-190s broke formation. Bf-109s dove away without firing. Some attempted head-on passes but veered off before committing, unwilling to face a wall of American 50-caliber fire. Below them, the bomber crews watched in disbelief as the mighty Luftwaffe, once the terror of Europe, began to fracture. A B-17 waist gunner shouted into his intercom, "Jesus, they're running." The aircraft commander didn't believe it until he saw it with his own eyes. Those P-47s, they're tearing them apart. By noon, the sky over Schweinfurt belonged to the Americans, not uncontested, not without cost. But something irreversible had happened. For the first time in the war, the Luftwaffe had not simply been beaten, it had been overpowered. The Thunderbolt, mocked as a flying milk jug, dismissed as overweight and clumsy, had proved something deadly. At altitude, in a dive, and in a gun run, it was the most fearsome fighter the Germans had ever faced. Zemke formed up with his squadron, leveling his wings. "Wolfpack," he said calmly, "escort the bombers home." Behind him, smoke trails spiraled downward, German fighters burning in the countryside below. Ahead of him, the horizon stretched toward England, clean and bright and blue. The P-47s turned west, victorious, and the Luftwaffe, bruised, bloodied, and humiliated, returned to their airfields with a dawning realization. The Americans had found their hammer, and Germany had run out of anvil. January 11th, 1944. 22,000 feet over Oschersleben, Germany. The cold was so fierce, it crept into a pilot's bones, numbing fingers even through insulated gloves. Frost feathered across canopies. Oxygen masks crackled with each breath. The sky was a pale, brittle blue, beautiful and murderous at the same time. Below, the bomber stream stretched like a silver spine through northern Germany. Each B-17 locked into formation, engines thundering, wings shuddering against flak bursts blooming like black flowers. And above them, Thunderbolts, dozens of them. Major Hubert Hub Zemke led the formation, the sun reflecting off his aircraft in a bright white glare. His cockpit hummed with the deep, resonant vibration of the massive Pratt & Whitney R-2800 beneath him. Then he saw them, specks, black flecks against the distant sun. Coming fast. Bandits, 120 high, looks like 40 plus, Zemke radioed. Wolfpack, tighten up. No panic in his voice, just cold, pure intent. The Luftwaffe was coming. At that altitude, the air was thin enough to make lesser engines gasp. German aircraft especially. Their superchargers, excellent at low and medium altitudes, strained in the upper reaches. Temperatures dropped. Engines hesitated. Carburetors froze. But the Jug thrived there. Its turbocharger scooped thin air, compressed it, fed it to the engine at full power, while every German fighter's engine stumbled for breath. It was like watching sprinters race against a machine. The German attack began. A wave of WWIIs dove first, cannons blazing, trying to tear into the bombers. Then came the Bf-109s, sleek and silver, slicing downward through the freezing sky with the confidence of men who had spent years dominating Europe. Zemke watched the sun flare off their wings. He almost felt sorry for them. Wolfpack, go get 'em! The Thunderbolts rolled as one. Metal screamed. Engines roared. Gravity grabbed them, and the P-47s dove. German pilot Oberleutnant Karl-Heinz Rademacher was the first to understand something was wrong. He saw a bomber in his gun sight. Steady, unprotected, vulnerable. He lined up for the kill. A perfect shot. Then, something flashed behind him. He jerked his head and saw shapes dropping from the sun. Fat-bodied fighters. Too big to maneuver. Too slow to catch him. American Thunderbolts. Rademacher grinned inside his mask. Wunderbar. They're too late. He fired. A second before his rounds hit the bomber, 8 50 caliber guns below him erupted at once. The sky flashed like a giant camera shutter. Tracer fire tore into his fuselage. A wing sheared off, his cockpit filled with smoke. He had just enough time to realize. They weren't slow. They weren't too big. They were everywhere. And he was falling. Down below, Captain Duck Johnson pulled out of his dive, the wind rattling the Jug's massive frame. He climbed back toward the bomber stream, eyes scanning for more Germans. He found them. A cluster of Bf-109s regrouping, radios crackling with frantic chatter, trying to reorganize for another pass. Johnson throttled forward. The turbocharger whined like a banshee. The Jug surged upward with impossible force, climbing when it had no business climbing. Engine roaring louder than the German pilots believed physics should allow. He leveled behind one 109, less than 200 yards. He fired. 8 streams of heavy machine gun fire converged into a single burning line. The 19 disintegrated. The pilot never had a chance. Back in the bomber stream, waist gunner Corporal Sam Jenkins watched the sky in awe as Thunderbolts tore past. Look at 'em, he muttered. Those Jugs are slamming them out of the sky. His co-pilot nodded. Hell, they're fighting like they're trying to prove something. In many ways, they were. The P-47 had spent months being mocked, called overweight, clumsy, a lumbering beast unfit for a dogfight. But the Germans weren't laughing now. As the battle raged, a turning point became unmistakable. The Luftwaffe's discipline frayed. Attacks grew sloppy. Their formations broke under relentless Thunderbolt pressure. German pilots who once dove with precision now peeled away early, unwilling to face the storm of 50 caliber fire. Thunderbolt pilots pushed harder, dove deeper, climbed higher. Everywhere the Germans attacked, the Jugs were already there, waiting, slamming them from above or tearing them apart in head-on runs. The Luftwaffe's veteran aces recognized the shift instantly. "Achtung!" one German radioed. "Amerikanische Donnerbolts überall." American Thunderbolts are everywhere. He wasn't exaggerating. They filled the sky. They ruled the altitude. They controlled the dive. And they outgunned everything. By the time the bombers turned for home, the Luftwaffe had thrown in nearly every fighter it could muster and lost more pilots than it could replace. Zemke looked out across a sky filled with smoke trails and falling wreckage. He felt no triumph, only the sober clarity of a commander who understood what he had just witnessed. The Luftwaffe had not only been defeated, it had been broken. The Jug, this big, ugly, heavy brute, had shattered the myth of German air supremacy. Zemke tightened his formation. "Wolfpack," he radioed quietly. "Escort the boys home." Behind him, the Thunderbolts rolled into position, wings steady, engines humming. The bomber crews looked up at them with something approaching reverence. Because today, the Jugs had saved them. And from this day forward, the Luftwaffe would never again attack American bombers with the same confidence. The sky belonged to the Juggernaut. February 20th, 1944. 25,000 feet above Leipzig, Germany. The world at that altitude was a frozen, hostile desert of sky. Frost etched delicate white veins across the canopies. Oxygen masks hissed steadily. Engine vibrations hummed through every bone. Even sunlight felt brittle, as if it could shatter at a touch. Lieutenant Frank Hawkeye Mullins flexed his gloved fingers on the stick of his P-47D Thunderbolt. Below him, the bomber's stream glittered like a steel river winding through flak bursts. Black puffs bloomed across the sky, each one a flower of shrapnel, waiting to tear open a B-17 or B-24. But Mullins wasn't watching the bombers. He was watching the sun. That's where they always came from. Moments later, his instincts proved right. Tiny shadows, faint specks, hung at the edge of the light. Then they multiplied. Then they moved. "Contact, 40 plus, high 2 o'clock. Mullins radioed calmly. "Wolfpack, they've spotted the heavies." The Luftwaffe was coming again. Below, German radar stations crackled with frantic transmissions. "Amerikanische Viermots über Leipzig. Jägerstadt. Schnell." American 4 engines over Leipzig. "Fighters, take off. Quickly." Lines of Bf-109s rolled down icy runways, their superchargers whining as pilots fought to coax altitude out of overstressed engines. FW-190s formed up behind them, sunlight flashing off their cowlings. Among them was Oberleutnant Victor Hartmann, a rising star in JG-300, one of the last fighter groups, still capable of mounting coordinated high-altitude attacks. Hartmann pulled his goggles down and exhaled once, steadying himself. "American bombers first. Ignore the escorts," he ordered his wingman. "The Jugs are too heavy to climb fast enough." But when he lifted his eyes to the contrails above, something was wrong. The Thunderbolts were already turning, already climbing, already waiting, and there were more of them than yesterday, and more than the day before that. Then the two forces collided. The first clash happened in a blinding flash of silver and fire. Mullins rolled inverted and dove straight into a formation of Bf-109s, just beginning their attack run. His engine roared. His 850 cal Brownings erupted in a blistering torrent. The lead 109 disintegrated in front of him, shattering into a cloud of debris and smoke. Hartmann's wingman screamed through the radio. "Gott im Himmel! What is that firepower?" Hartmann didn't answer. He was too busy fighting for his life. He yanked his stick hard right. His 109 groaned under the G-forces as a wall of 50 cal fire ripped past his canopy. The Thunderbolt thundered by in a blur, a massive, unstoppable machine with the appetite of a battleship. Hartmann gritted his teeth and dove. The Jug followed, and it was gaining. The fight became a maze of spirals, dives, and explosive bursts of gunfire. For the first time in years, German pilots found themselves being hunted. The Thunderbolt's turbocharger howled as Mullins pushed his aircraft harder, climbing in a near-vertical arc behind Hartmann. The German pilot's breath fogged inside his mask. "How?" he rasped. No Allied fighter was supposed to climb like that. Not at 25,000 feet. Not with that weight. Not with that size. But the Jug didn't care what was supposed to happen. It simply climbed, and when Mullins squeezed the trigger again, the 8 guns lit the sky like a furnace. Hartman dove away in a desperate split S, barely escaping with his life. His pride did not. Meanwhile, Captain Al Simmons found himself in the middle of a swarm of FW-190s diving toward the bomber stream. He didn't wait. He punched his throttle, felt the jugs surge beneath him, and fired a 3-second burst. It was enough. 3 seconds. Over 100 rounds per second. More than 350 cal slugs smashed into the tight German formation. One 190 burst into flames. Another snapped apart mid-roll. A third spiraled downward in a trail of black smoke. The surviving German pilots broke away, shaken, terrified, no longer the confident hunters they had been minutes earlier. Simmons exhaled, adrenaline spiking. This is our sky now. Down in the bomber stream, waist gunner Sam Jenkins stared upward with disbelief. Thunderbolts curved across the heavens like armored angels, ripping holes through the Luftwaffe's attack. "Look at 'em!" Jenkins shouted over the engine roar. "Those jugs are tearing the Jerry's a new one." His squadron's radio came alive with chatter. "Jug on your tail, brake left." "I got him. Fox 1's on the deck. Watch your 6. Jug coming in high." German attacks that once hit with terrifying precision now looked disorganized, fractured, desperate. The Luftwaffe had never faced anything like this. A fighter that could dive like a meteor, climb like a rocket, and hit like a flying fortress. Today, they learned its name, Juggernaut. By noon, the battle was over. The bombers turned toward home. Zemke called over the radio. "Wolfpack, form on me. Let's bring the boys back." The Thunderbolts slid into their escort positions, battered, smoke-trailed, but victorious. Far below, the Luftwaffe limped back to scattered bases, fewer pilots returning than had taken off. Many fewer. Hartman landed with trembling hands. His aircraft was riddled with holes. Black streaks of burned paint scarred his fuselage. He climbed out, removed his helmet, and stared numbly at the sky he no longer recognized. "Ein Ungeheuer," he whispered. "A monster. A juggernaut." For the first time, he understood why German command feared the new American escort fighter so deeply. The P-47 had come to Europe mocked and underestimated. By early 1944, no one was laughing anymore.